from yesterday. I represents the square root of negative 1. I represents the square root of negative 1. Anytime you have a negative under your square root, it auto becomes an I. I squared is like the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1. And we know that if we have two of the same square roots times each other, the square roots cancel. So like the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5, because that's the equivalent of the square root of negative 1 squared. And we know that a square root and a square cancel each other. So I squared is always rewritten as negative 1. So if you have an I squared on your handout or your paper, you are going to rewrite it as negative 1. I cubed is I times I squared. So if I squared is negative 1 and I is I cubed is negative I. I to the 4th is the same as I squared times I squared. So negative 1 times negative 1 is the same as 1. I to the 5th would be like I to the 4th times I. Well, I to the 4th is 1. I is I. So I to the 5th is I. Remember, to change powers, you add them. So that's why I to the 6th would be like I to the 4th times I squared, because 4 plus 2 gives you 6. I to the 4th is 1. I squared is negative 1. I to the 6th is negative 1. So what's I to the 7? It's an I, and is it positive or negative? I to the 8. So it goes I, negative 1, negative I, 1. I, negative 1, negative I, 1. So the I's and the 1's take turns, and then it goes positive, negative, negative, positive. So what that means is that every multiple of 4, all multiples of 4 are going to be 1. Even non-multiples of 4 will be negative 1. So multiples of 4 are 1. Even numbers that are not a multiple of 4 are negative 1. And then you kind of got to figure out your odds. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to figure out the odds. So we have I to the 13. Is 13 even or a multiple of 4? No. So what you do is you take the number 13 and you divide it by 4. No. 13 divided by 4 is 3.25. If you have a remainder of 0.25, if you have a remainder of 0.25, then this is an I. So, well, like an opposite J, I do that because if you don't sometimes, you think it can become confusing with numbers.
Wait, did you say opposite J?
Yeah, it's like a reverse.
So an L?
No, like a J goes like this. Look, a J goes like this. So it's like a flip J. Because that's a J. Okay. $11. So the answer to I to the 13 is I. Well, think about it. 12 is 1 less than 13, right? So a multiple of 4 is the last multiple in your cycle. So if 12 is like I to the 4th, then 13 is like I. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Back up here for 13. So the division allows you to get the remainder. So if you have a remainder, ready, we'll do this. If you do your division, if your remainder is 0.25, it's I. If your remainder is 0.5, it's I squared. 0.75 is I cubed. And no remainder means it was divisible by 4, which means it's a multiple of 4, which means it's I to the 4th, which is negative 1. So, like, you kind of have to memorize that. It has to be one of those 4 answers. Like, there are no other choices. Sorry. Sure, sweetie. Oh, sorry. I was writing upside. Yes, sorry. So I wrote it from the bottom up, and I'm so used to writing the pattern down that I didn't even. The exponent will determine your power of I, yes. All right, let's go down below and look at 11. Okay, I to the 11. So 11 divided by 4. It's obviously not an even. So you get a remainder of 0.75. So a remainder of 0.75 tells me that this is equal to, perfect, negative I. Because it's like I cubed, which is negative I. Okay, 91. Because the cycles of I, it's going to mess up my writing a little bit, but Do you see how there's 4 powers? So you divide by 4 to figure out which power you're at. All of the exponents will always be divided by 4. Yes. Guys, I have questions being asked and can't hear. A remainder of 0.25 would be like I. Yes, it would be a positive I. Negative I, yep. So 91 divided by 4, what do you get? You get 22 point. So exactly, 0.75 is negative I. Okay, so 244. So 244 divided by 4 is 61. Does it have a remainder? Perfect. It's just 1 because it's divisible by 4, so it's 1. Okay, 10 divided by 4. This one should also be easy. 10 is even. Exactly. So it's 2.5. It's an even, not divisible by 4. So an even, not divisible by 4 is considered an I squared, which in this case is negative 1. You can add i's together. You can add i's together, but they're like variables. If I gave you x cubed and x to the 6th, that does not equal x to the 9th. So I to the 6th plus I cubed doesn't equal I to the 9th. What you're going to do is simplify them. So what is I to the 6th? So same as I squared. So it's negative 1. I cubed is the negative I, exactly. So this is like negative 1 minus I. All right, so that kind of leaves us where we're going to pause for today. You have 4 homework problems left on the worksheet from yesterday, as well as a quizzes that's only 10 questions that I would like to see you do now, just so I can get an idea of how we're doing with these powers of I. You can write, yeah, I was going to say, you have your powers of I in front of you. Yes, sir. So you have 20 minutes left. You could do your quizzes. And then, there's 20 minutes left to do the quizzes and those 4 questions. And then if you didn't finish yesterday's homework. So yesterday's homework, the 4 questions for today, all of that's due at our normal 10 a.m. Dropbox time tomorrow. I don't know why that board's glitching. The assignment tab on Fusion.